listening to that reminded me of Solomon, how the Solomon said that he went in search of wisdom. And in all his searching, he comes back and he says it's all meaningless. That's what that just sitting there reminded me of that. Because I'm thinking, here's a guy who's singing about life. And even some of the things that we think should be okay in life. Even it sings about joy. And yet hasn't a smile on his face. And his understanding of all this stuff that we're experiencing in life, and even the things that we think are good, that they're not taking us on an upward mobile journey. That's his interpretation. But this is the road to hell, and nothing's going to change it, and nothing's going to stop it. Makes me think as well about some of this, well, all the stuff that the world's been going through. We hear some of, and I'm not going to get into the football thing, but a lot of us are looking forward to the game tonight. And we can understand why some people get agitated and angry about the English commentators. And if they were Italian commentators, French commentators speaking about their team, they would be just as over the top on their team as anyone will be. But when they say things like, we really need this and we deserve this because of what we have come through, they're talking about the pandemic. And it's like, no one else has gone through this. You know, the Italians deserve it as well because they also have come through it and so on. It's a world thing. And there's stuff that's going on that even as Christians, that while we may well get concerned about things, the fact of the matter is there are things that we will not change, and we pray, let your kingdom come, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Every credit card that you're sitting with in your pocket, some of you wish you had one, but there you go, that's another story. But your credit cards, your pockets that no longer carry the same amount of cash that it used to because things are changing. That's all an indication of the fact that the world is moving on, the world is moving forward, and we're going to a destination that the Bible speaks about. And if you think people are banned into what the devil wants to do because of choices they're making, then your credit card in your pocket is banned into a cashless society. And everything is leading to one ultimate final destination, which is the return of Jesus Christ and the establishment of his kingdom on earth. Chris Rea sings about the road to hell. And it seems that in singing about it, he feels that everyone else is on that same road. Seems like as far as he's concerned, no one is upwardly mobile. We're all on this downward spiral. We're all on the road to hell. And yet Jesus Christ himself made it absolutely clear that there are two roads. There's a narrow road that leads to heaven. He says there's few that find it, and that's few in comparison to those that are on the broad road, because he talks about the broad road that's leading to hell, and he says many are on that road. And that's the greatest tragedy, that there's a broad road leading people to hell, and that the vast majority of humanity are on that particular road. And so Chris Rea may well sing about the road to hell, but Jesus talks about the two roads, the narrow road and the broad road. This morning, though, I want to focus on the fact that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. This is a little saying that's been around for many, many years. I don't know where to start it. Maybe I should have Googled it. But it's been around for a long, long time. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. I want to read a few verses from Luke chapter 15. Jonathan made reference to this recently and as he was speaking in the church. I want to focus more on it this morning. Luke 15 and verses 11 to 19. And it'll be on the screen if you're not following on your own Bible or tablet or whatever the case is. Luke 15, verse 11. Jesus said, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all that he had, and he set off for a distant country. There he squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country. And he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen. In other words, he got a job. He went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, it's a good place to come to. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and he went to his father." He got up and he went to his father. When the prodigal son was away from his father's house, this guy messed up so badly that he hit rock bottom in no time. In fact, this guy hit rock bottom so hard that it caused him to come to his senses. It makes me think that sometimes God lets us get to that same place so that we too might come to our senses, so that he can get our attention, so that we would listen to him. Sadly, that's how it works at times. And I don't know how many times in life that I've heard people say that if this hadn't happened to me, then I wouldn't have heard what God was saying. And sometimes God allows us to go down a road based on our choices that brings us to that rock bottom situation that causes us to hit that brick wall so that we stop and we come to our senses and we begin to listen to what God has to say about our lives and about our circumstances. This guy hit rock bottom so very quickly. But having done so, he was determined that he would get up from where he was. So it's one thing to hit rock bottom, it's another thing to make a choice to get you away from where you are. He hit rock bottom, but he determines, I'm going to get up from where I am, he says, and get back to where he was meant to be. That's the determination that hit this prodigal son when he came to his senses. I want to tell you, friends, wrong choices, next slide please, wrong choices will take you where you don't belong. Wrong choices will always take you where you don't belong. But right choices will take you where you're meant to be. And even when you do find yourself in a situation where you've made a wrong choice, you've gone down a wrong road, you've messed up, you've hit rock bottom, right choices will cause you to get up from where you are and to get back to where you're meant to be. Wrong choices will take you where you don't belong. But right choices will take you where you're meant to be. No one wants to end up in the pig pen or the pigsty as this prodigal did. Not to mention the doghouse. Don't know if any women end up in the doghouse, but men do. But no one wants to end up in the pig pen. And no one wants to end up in hell. You can be sure of that. There's a survey done a number of years ago, and it shows us something like 87% of the entire population of the United Kingdom, they believe in a spiritual existence beyond the physical one. Less than that, but still a majority of the population believe in heaven and believe in hell. And even among those who believe in hell, the vast majority of them don't want to end up there. There are those who will clown about and say it doesn't matter and they don't care about it and so on. But the reality is, even though people may well believe in an eternal hell, no one genuinely, truly wants to end up in hell. But sadly, many end up doing so. And the fact is that many go down that road and they do so with good intentions. Not setting out to end up in a place called hell, but going down the road towards it with good intentions. Promises to change, but never change. Promises to turn over a new leaf, but never really, truly turning over a new leaf. Promises that things will be different. And it's promises, promises, promises. Again and again, the same promises, the same attempts, but nothing ever changes. All the promises made to self and all the leaf turnings are all meaningless unless we actually do what we say we would do. I think we've all been in that situation. We've all been in that place where we've made promises to each other. We make promises to those in our families. We make promises to church. We make promises to God. But all these promises are totally meaningless unless we are prepared to do something and actually change. But the problem is we seldom do. And so the road that we're on, or the road that those that find themselves on, that has taken them to a lost and a Christless eternity, is a road that remains filled with good intentions. Some promise to be a better father, a better mother, a better husband, a better wife, a better person in general, even to be a better Christian. Some even vow to be a better pastor. We always want to improve. We always want to be better. And we make those promises to be better. Some even make the resolve that one day they will become a Christian. And yet the reality is that some find themselves in a lost and Christless eternity because they never got to that point. And they never actually did. And so nothing ever changes. It remains a promise. Next slide, please. And so sadly, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But many of those good intentions remain unfulfilled and unbroken promises, if you have that one. Unfulfilled and unbroken promises. You see, friends, making promises and making plans and having the best of intentions, and we all have them, do not change things and do not change people. You can sit on your own for hours and make your plans, and you can dream of things being better and things being different. You can even get out your pen and paper, this is what I'm going to do, and you can make those promises, you can set them out. But unless you're prepared to actually step up and do something, then the promises remain unfulfilled and they remain broken. I mean, how many people in this place, even if we were all honest about it, how many of you have made promises, not asking you to put your hands up because they'll all probably do it anyway, but how many of you have made promises that you look back on it and you never really kept that promise? You made plans and those plans still remain unfulfilled. And not just because something came from left field, you didn't see it coming, and that was what took control of the situation. No, it's because you made promises and you set plans that you didn't follow through and you didn't see fulfilled. I don't know, many times I've sat with people and have said, you know, Jack, someday, because I know it's the right choice to make, and someday I'm going to give my life to Jesus. And they'll talk about people in this church, they'll mention names here. And they'll say that we watch them, we know their lifestyle, we know what they're like in the past, we've seen what God has done in their lives. And we want to be like them. And they think that someday we'll do this, someday we'll make this choice, someday we will surrender and give our lives to Jesus, because that's what they genuinely want to do but have never done so. Some even come out to church week after week, different places, attending church, sing the songs, listen to the word. Nothing changes. And if that's where you are today, then you might not be in the pig pen like this prodigal son was. You might not even be in the doghouse, but you're not in the Father's house. And that's what matters. You're not in the Father's house. You may be in church, but being in church and being in the Father's house are two entirely different things. You can be sitting in church every week. It doesn't make you a Christian. Someone said you can be living in McDonald's. It doesn't make you a Big Mac. You can be in church week after week after week. Does not make you a Christian. And you could be in the Father's house, and it's well, you know you need to be in terms of having that relationship with Him. So no matter where you go, the Father's house becomes your relationship with Him. I often hear people say, I don't need to go to church, and by that they mean I don't need to go to the church building. And there's an amount of truth in that. The Bible tells us we should not forsake the assembling of ourselves together. The Bible encourages fellowship, so we can encourage and bless and reach out and support and strengthen one another. We all need church. We need each other. We need fellowship. But you don't need to be here in order to experience the Father's presence. And in order to be in the Father's house, you can be in the Father's house when you're in your own house, wherever you are. You can know and experience the Father's presence even when you're out shopping or whatever you're doing on a daily basis. The prodigal son left the Father's house. He did so with the best intentions. Yes, those intentions were all self-centered, but he never intended wasting everything that he had. He never intended wasting his life. He never intended squandering what the Father had given him. He never intended ending up dining with the pigs. Going and working for them is one thing, but dining with them, eating with them. We know many farmers across this country, and thank God for them. For those that are not vegan or whatever the other one is, vegetarian, there are those of us that are happy. Now, of course, farmers do more than just the meat. We understand that. I don't know any farmer that sits with the pigs and eats the food with them. Don't know anyone that's working as hard hands on farms and that are sitting with the animals and feeding with them. That's what happened to this particular person, but he never intended that this would happen. And yet the road away from the Father's house, this was his choice. I'm going to leave the Father's house, pack up everything that I have. I'm going to go and do my own thing. And he's moving away from the Father's house with the best of intentions, but not knowing that that road before him would lead him to this place where he'd sit and not only work with the pigs, but literally dine with them. The road from the Father's house was paved with good intentions, but he never intended ending up here. That was never his intention. And this guy got so far down that there was no more down to go. The only way for him wasn't just Essex. The only way is Essex. No, there's a better way than Essex. The only way is up. We can get up, and this guy could get up from where he was. This guy could look around and see his circumstances, see the situation that he was in, and knew that he didn't have to stay there, that he could get up from where he was and move forward. And this was the reality that he came to. The things don't have to stay this way. I can get up from where I am and get back to my Father's house. You see, friends, good intentions don't always get you to the right place. Good intentions do not always get you to the right place, but making the right choice does. When you make right choices, you don't only talk about change, you actually change. And you can have the best of intentions, how things are going to change, and those good intentions do not make the situation different. It's only when you're prepared to change and do something where things around you change. The prodigal son chose to leave the Father's house. That was his choice. He had made that decision. He had come to a place in his life where, as a young man, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm not going to do what my parents are telling me to do. I'm not going to do what my father has taught me to do. I'm going to do my own thing. And I'm going to leave with the best intent. We'll stay in touch, but I'm going to go off and do my own thing. He chose to leave the Father's house. But he did so for the wrong reasons. He just simply wanted to do his own thing, go and live it up somewhere else. And it took him to a place where he didn't belong, where no one belonged. Things are okay for a while. He's met new friends and things are going okay for a while. But then things took a turn for the worse when he squandered everything that he had, when he had nothing left, and when those who used him when he had something finally deserted him and left him on his own. How sad that that's how life can so often turn out. You reach out, you give of yourself to help, to bless, to encourage people. And then when you feel like you've been used and you're looking around for that same support and it's not there, this is where this guy was. And many of you have been in places like that where you know you've reached out, you've helped. This guy's sitting back, have nothing left. And because I've nothing left, I've no one left, I'm on my own, he's thinking. So he ends up working for this farmer. He ends up working with the pigs. He ends up sitting next to the pigs in the pig pen. And then he moves on to sitting with them, possibly talking to them, and now he's eating their food. And isn't that so much like life itself? Because I want to tell you, friends, if you're willing to work with the pigs and to sit with the pigs, you'll end up dining with them. And that becomes a tragedy in life itself. This is not something the prodigal son had planned to do. He did not waking up one day and say, Dad, I'm leaving home. I'm going to live with pigs and I'm going to eat their food because I don't like the food in this house. That was not his choice. That was not part of his plans. That's not what he decided he was going to do. No one wakens up saying they're going to mess up. No one wakens up saying, I'm going to be a heroin addict. No one wakens up one morning saying, today I'm going to be a cokehead. Today I'm going to become an alcoholic. No one wakens up saying, today I'm going to become homeless because I want to be homeless. And I want to see what it's like to live in the streets and to beg for support, for money and for food. No one wakens up in the morning to make the decisions, that's what I'm going to do with this life of mine. That becomes a consequence of the choices that were made, the choices that are made. And so sleeping and dining with pigs was never on the prodigal's agenda. But even though he had better intentions, that's where his choices took him. Sometimes you walk past people in the streets. You might look, you might glance, you might even pop over and chat for a moment or two. You might give them something. And these are people who did not plan. Maybe there came a moment when they said, well, this is what I need to do. But that was not their plan when they set out in life. That's where their choices have taken them. This prodigal had not made the plan. It wasn't his purpose. I'll leave the father's house. I'm going to end up eating with the pigs. But he comes to a place where he decides to make another choice. Most people would have given up in that situation. And I think, again, sadly, many of us know people who have given up. But this prodigal, this boy, this son, made the decision that he would not give up. There came the day when he made a choice that everything would change. And everything would change in a moment because he now makes a right choice, even finding himself in that wrong situation. See, he knew he didn't belong in the pig pen. And there are people who are in places today and they know that they don't belong there. They're hitting rock bottom. They're hitting the brick wall. And they know this is not where I belong. And this prodigal, he got to the place where he knew he didn't belong in the pig pen among those pigs eating their food. He knew that whatever his intentions were in leaving the father's house, that he was just a soul whose intentions were good. And the world is filled with such souls. And he knew that those intentions did not include this situation. And so he makes this choice to change. He told himself what he would do. I love that about this particular story. He told himself what he would do. Sometimes it's good to tell yourself what to do. Because there are people who will not listen to anyone else but themselves. You need to listen to yourself. Yeah, it's good to listen to other people, particularly whenever they have your best interest at heart. You might not like what they're saying, but they're saying it because they love you. And when all is said and done and you want to shut everyone else out, you've got to listen to yourself. Talk to yourself. Even David talked to himself. David got depressed and writes it out and becomes one of his verses in one of the Psalms. Why are you cast down, O my soul? He's talking to himself. He's asking himself, why are you cast down? Nothing wrong with talking to yourself. The problem is when you start answering back, that's the problem. But nothing wrong with talking to yourself, and you give yourself some good advice. This guy spoke to himself. He told himself what to do. And he said to himself, it's time to get up. I will arise. I'm getting out of here. It's time to get up from this place, and it's time to get to the Father's house, because there's servants in my Father's house, and they're in a far better situation than me. They're well clothed. They're looked after. And if I go back to my Father's house, even if he makes me one of his servants, I'll be far better off than what's going on right here. And he begins to reason the whole thing out, and he convinces himself that this is the thing to do. I'm getting up. But he didn't stop with words. Those are good thoughts, sitting where he was, thinking about the Father's house, thinking about the servants, and better off than himself, thinking of, if I go back there, I go back as a servant, I'll be better off there than what I am here. Those were good thoughts. But he didn't stop with the thoughts, and he didn't stop with the words. He actually did something about his situation. He got up, turned his words into action, and he went home, and he went back to the Father. I'll finish in a moment. If the worship team want to come to the platform, please. Went back to the Father. I love that image of the son being totally messed up and in a very bad situation, and all the result of his choices. No one forced this on him. The father didn't want it. The mother, I'm sure she was there, didn't want it. His friends, his real true friends, wouldn't have wanted this for him. This was his choice that ultimately led to where he was in that situation. So I love this image of him coming to the place where everything's messed up, but now he decides, I'm going to make a different choice. And I'm going back to where I know I will be better off. I'm going back to my Father's house. So he got up and he went home. Many people make the same promise. Many look at their lives, their situations, and think, I'd be far better off doing this, but never do. I'd be far better off if I make a change, if I put things into action, but never do. And it's possible that you're here this morning in New Life City Church, and some even watching online, that you've been in that situation many times where you've thought, I know I need to change, but never have done. This might even be for someone who's a Christian today, because we could preach another sermon entitled The Road to Heaven is Paved with Good Intentions. We come to church with good intentions. We leave church with good intentions. We go through life from one day to the next, 1 week to the next, with good intentions. And we make those promises. But sadly, the promises remain unfulfilled and broken even for Christians. And I want to encourage you this morning that even though you're not in the situation the prodigal son found himself in, that whatever you need to do in order to make change and to make things better for yourself and for others, that you make those changes. You make those changes. If you're not a Christian, then this morning you have a chance to not only promise to do, but to ensure that whatever road you're on is not just paved with good intentions, but it's not the road that leads to hell. And you're not simply singing along with Chris Rea that no matter about the circumstances, no matter about life, no matter about the things that might even appear good at times, that you resign yourself to the belief we can't change it. We're on a downward spiral because this is a road to hell. It doesn't have to end that way. It doesn't have to be that way. You can make the choice right now that this guy made to get up from where you are and to get back or to get into the Father's house. I encourage you to do that this morning.